Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member for having this hearing today, and our witnesses for your sharing your insights, your patience. I know it's been a long day, but this is a critically important issue. As we've talked about throughout the day, since October 7th, the worst day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, a day when Hamas sent thousands of fighters across the border, terrorists across the border, barbarically murdered, tortured, raped, burned dead bodies, more than 1,200 killed, 250 taken hostage. Since that horrific day, we have seen a spike of anti-Semitism around the world, in the United States, but in particular, we're talking today about what we've seen on campuses. We've mentioned the spike. We've mentioned the fact, I think Mr. Deutch mentioned that 80% of Jewish students on campus have a sense of identity, of connection, of personal closeness to the Jewish state. Not surprisingly, I think the other statistic besides that is that approximately 80% of Jewish students report fear or reluctance or decision not to wear or display outward signs of their Judaism, whether it's wearing a kippah or a Star of David. What I'd like to do, with the chairman's permission, is introduce into the record a document, the American Jewish Committee State of Anti-Semitism in America 2023 Insights and Analysis.
Without objection.
Thank you. We talked earlier in the opening remarks, the sense was part of the reason for this rise in anti-Semitism was weak university leadership, the failure of universities to enforce their policies, of university leaders to make clear, morally clear statements. We've talked about the radical faculty and other things. And throughout this, we've also touched, and I'll add my items to the list, but following the money. It's not just the money that's funding universities. It's the money that's funding these groups like Students for Justice in Palestine. Earlier when I was focusing on faculty, students, and Ms. Dror, I'll pick on you. You made it through in 4 years. Correct?
3.
3, even better.
Yeah.
But over the course of that, freshman students come in, they have to learn their way around, they pick their classes, they get involved with various organizations. Sophomore year, they start thinking about major, junior major, and graduate and go on to pursue their careers. But there is an imbalance as groups like SJP have people who are in their 13th year of their 4-year PhD program, not having completed a single class, but they're there with a purpose and with funding behind it. I think we need to look into that. But I also want to be careful that we don't paint with too broad of a brush. Dr. Belesny, you mentioned there are, I think, 70 schools where we had these protests, roughly 3,000 people who have been arrested, but there are 4,000 colleges and universities across this country. Not every university has gotten it wrong. Not every university has been affected by what we've seen on some of the campuses in the news. And we have to be careful that we don't delegitimize differences of opinion, which is what we should see on our universities, the ability to have that debate with each other, with the focus on hate and violence. Hate begets violence. Violence makes our students feel unsafe, and ultimately there will be consequences. Mr. Deutch, I want to turn to you with the minute that's left, but you've been here in Congress, you're at an American Jewish Committee seeing the challenges being faced across the country. Can you highlight the most important things we should be doing besides talking about it and putting a spotlight on the hate and violence we're seeing on campus? What actions should we be taking that will have a real difference as we head to the new academic year?
Thank you. Look, I think the conversation about tax exempt status is important. I think the conversation about foreign funding is important. I would add to that, by the way, why not have every student group have to certify that they don't accept foreign funding as well? There are lots of things that are part of this bigger issue that we have to deal with. But right now, there is a train that is barreling down the tracks. Literally, you saw it in New York in a subway car. When people are allowed to get on a subway car and say, where are the Zionists? Are there Zionists here? No Zionists here. This is your chance to get out. That should send a chill down everyone's spine. what Congress can do most, and here's what I've learned since I left. Here's my message to my former colleagues. I say this with enormous respect, and not to just make you feel even better about the job you have. You have enormous power individually, every one of you. And what can you do? Every one of you, yes, the committee should act, and Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful to you and to the Speaker for this whole of the House approach, but every one of you can play a role in your community, listening to your Jewish students, listening to the Jewish community. If you don't have a large Jewish community, you can speak out in support of the American values that are at risk when we see what's happening around the country continue to take place. That's what you can do. Expect the universities to take action now in advance of this coming academic year to help protect Jewish students, protect their environment that they operate in, our university system overall, and ultimately our democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for one more second. The video from that train car was horrific, as they said, any Zionist here, any Zionist here. Any Jewish person in that car would have been afraid to stand up. But
not me.
Let me finish.
I would have stood up.
Let me finish, please. But no one else stood up either. It was utter silence, and those people were able to say what they say. We have to speak out, and that's why this hearing is important. We need to stand up. We need to speak out and say, I say proudly as a Jew, but I say as an American, hate has no place in our country. We will stand up and make sure it is defeated. I yield back.